What is happening? Welcome to another episode of On the Corner, the official podcast of PitcherList.com. My name is Nick Pollock on this lovely Monday night. As I have a special episode, I do these every single year. I go over the podcast Pitcher List staff mock draft. That's not the necessarily order of the words. Don't worry about it. Where we draft a 12-teamer head-to-head, 5x5 Yahoo team with two different Otanis. That's 3 outfielders, 2 utility, no middle infield. And we then talk about it. We have an early ADP, and we talk about it in these drafts. That means that all 276 players that were drafted get discussed over the winter. And today, after having Chad Young already go, we have the wonderful guys for Wins Above Fantasy on the Pitcherlist Podcast Network. Oh my gosh, Van Burnett, Steve Gesuele, so good to have you both here. Van, it's been too long. Good to see you.
Hey, thanks, Nick. Giving you the life notes. Had a daughter this year, following Steve's footsteps. Life is good. 4 years in the books for Wins Above Fantasy.
Unreal.
Shout out to the listeners. It's been great.
Oh my gosh, so many wins above fantasy. And Steve, I mean, rocking the New Jersey Devils hat, knowing I'm from Brooklyn, New York, is kind of cruel.
Yeah. Like we were saying a little bit off air, I always represent my little underdog team from Jersey there.
Oh my gosh.
That is other than fantasy baseball, my biggest passion in life outside of my family. That like Van.
Of course.
Gotta make sure the family gets in there.
Have a little girl too, and a wife
That's
that
close.
support me in my little hobbies here.
Look, I'm happy the second sport is hockey. I'll just put it that way.
Yeah.
But we've got work to do. We've got a long one for everybody here. I'm happy that you are watching live on our YouTube channel. Of course, On the Corner has one. Wins Above Fantasy have one. Every single podcast you listen to on the Pitcher List Podcast Network has their own YouTube channel. They are live streaming all of these. You can watch these episodes. I can't express enough how much better these shows are with video. You get to actually really understand the ebbs and flows of these episodes and really get to know the people that you listen to all the time. But we have this mock draft to talk about. You're going to see the board below in the description. Go check it out. We will be having an article that also covers it a bit more about all the different picks, all the reviews of it. And we also are planning on doing a larger staff one with other people that weren't inside the podcast network so that we can get a proper ADP for next season. What I'm so excited about, it's not your NFC ADP, guys. Don't use that. It is not 12-team redraft. It is draft and hold and gladiator, and those are completely different leagues. Do not use NFC ADP. This is a much better one, an accurate one from experts that you trust. So we're going to jump in here, and Van, we'll start with you here. You were probably talking with Steve about which pick you wanted in this. From 1 to 12, and you guys chose 5 right ahead of me. Why is that?
Well, for us, Steve has convinced me to buy into the philosophy over the 4 years of our podcast to wait on pitching. So for us, it's in this kind of draft makeup, we wanted to get as close to the front as possible to get a stud hitter, at least to start out. So I think we're pretty happy with our 1-2 punch for first and second round bats. So that's a little teaser there, but yeah, I don't know if anything to add there, Steve, on a quick hit, but I think it was just trying to get the best bat early on.
I agree. I think, and this wasn't directly the question, but I think there's a clear top 3 tier this year. There isn't always the case. That isn't always the case. I feel like basically since the decline of Mike Trout, you can there's multiple number 1 picks in most years. Sure. Yeah. There's like, the year Acuna's coming off 40-70, like last year, he's the clear number 1. I actually wrote an article on that. One of my first articles at Pitcher List about like the diversity at the top pick, but I feel at least now there's a tier in top 3. And to be honest, I would have taken top 3 if they weren't taken already by the time
you guys are slow.
Got to sign up. Yeah, we were slow. And then honestly, I wanted the highest pick, and then saw that you were 6. Thought it would be good for content to be
there. It is there. I was waiting for that. I was 6, so you had opportunity to snipe me both ways, and especially you guys are saying wait for pitching. I mean, that's certainly my mantra, and I waited longer than I normally would. I think at least I said I gave a hard rule at 7, not even any sort of adaptation, depending on how the draft went. And boy, did so many names drop that it really justified it. It was the way to go in this one, but then again, I don't know if you're going to see that. Typically, small sample size, even with ADP guys, this is a pitcherless staff mock, and generally that means that pitching does go later, as I like to think that we're all aligned in following the same strategy and reading SB roundups and lists and stuff like that. We all see the same stuff.
Yeah.
So I agree with you about the top 3 also. I think there's a top 13 of hitters, something like that, or 14 of hitters for me as well, as we talked about with Chad Young, where I really feel like there's a second tier after that. And then it kind of, trying to get as many of those high-end ones as possible is great, which is why I want like people to take Scooble and Skeens and Wheeler and Chris Sale. That'd be great, especially Chris Sale. But I do find it funny that Miles Nelson, Steve, also had his first article about the number 1 pick. He's made the argument for Jose Altuve over Mike Trout, as Altuve's average was expressed
I remember
over
that. I remember that article.
More at bats, not plate appearances at bats. So essentially, you had more expression of that batting average than Mike Trout because he walked far, far more. He'll tell you about what he thinks actually about that article in retrospect. So we are going to move on now to your actual pick. It was Shohei Ohtani, Judge, and Witt as those top 3, as you mentioned. Jose Ramirez went 4, and you guys went Elly de la Cruz. And I know, Steve, you're wearing the Elly de la Cruz shirt right now. If you want to show everybody, look at that. Oh man, it's out of GTA 5 or any of the GTAs, Cincinnati. Looks awesome. So Elly de la Cruz obviously coming off of a massive stolen base season. Is it just that you're like, look, I want to lock up stolen bases? I would think you guys would be encouraged not to chase stolen bases as much, given 5x5. It's really only 10% of the categories typically, unlike Roto, where you really feel like you need to get that or you're out completely. A little bit different weekly. Tell us about Elly de la Cruz.
I'll take this one first, if you don't mind, Van. I kind of pioneered for this pick, and Van was in agreement, but I think I sort of
you
hit
pushed
the button.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
And as much as Elly's steals are sort of devalued in a 5x5, it's still valuable in a weekly league in that you really only need one player, and that's him, that could win you the category in a weekly head-to-head league. But what was more impressive for me was the fact that his rolling process plus charts, and I looked at it as sort of I was doing prep for the show, sort of just shows how he developed into a more well-rounded hitter as the year went on. If you don't remember correctly, I had Elly in a few leagues, and one of the main leagues that I did well in, he started off amazing, got me off to this great start, sort of slumped, and then you see him adjust back to the league after a year of, Scott Chu showing the rolling charts where he made better decisions as year went on, had better swing decisions, swung at the right pitches. And that process plus chart sort of captures that adjustment back, and then just a straight hike up for the rest of the season. And then, the underlying numbers that back that up is the fact that he improved his chase rate and his in-zone swing rate. Sometimes you see that manifest itself when the guy improved their chase rate by just not swinging at all. But the fact that he swung more in the zone, swung less out of the zone, sort of combined and shows me why I believe that process plus. And that Elly is not just a guy that is going to be, a single stolen base category. I think there's a lot more power in that 12.5% power rate. And I think he can come closer to, 35 homers, 40 homers in his prime power seasons, which he's approaching.
Yeah. So I will push back a little that Elly de la Cruz's decisions have always been bad. Even in the power surge moments, it was still actually really bad. But he had contact at that point, and that nullified it. And Scott Chu does say, like, I don't care if they have bad decision values if they're getting contact, because who cares? And if they're getting contact and power, then it doesn't matter. They can swing wherever the heck they want. They can hit it. But the fact that he just, it certainly seemed to me like it was a hot moment of being able to hit anything. And it did fall off by the end. The power came down when the contact came down as well. So I do wonder if they're going to see some ebb and flow next year. But yeah, he's obviously a fantastic hitter. He's going to get a ton of stolen bases. And I do understand in 5x5, locking up the stolen base guy does put you at an advantage every week. And it's not like you're losing on other categories along the way because of that. So I totally get it. Van, you really backed this one up with another stolen base guy, though, Corbin Carroll, who obviously had a better second half than the first one. I went to bed in my PL Legacy League, auto drafted, because I essentially set my top 10 or whatever. And I woke up with Corbin Carroll at like the 9 pick, and I was shocked. I just put him there because I felt like I had to. And I really wanted someone else, but then Soto and Judge went ahead of him. And I was like, well, I guess I got Corbin Carroll. This is ridiculous. And everyone was right, and I was wrong. And I feel so stupid about it. But I eventually got there by the second half. Fortunately, it was okay. Corbin Carroll, is he all right? I mean, are we going to see like a 15 home run, 20 home runs season? Are we going to see that power surge again? Or is it really just you believe in the runs and the stolen bases in the second round here?
No, I think the power is probably the most encouraging thing, because coming into this year, there were so many questions with like the shoulder and what he would do. And in the first half, just 5 home runs. And that's when everybody was kind of hitting the panic button, 635 OPS. But the second half, it wasn't just the speed. It was the 17 homers in the second half and a monster end of the year.
Oh man, that's September.
Yeah, I mean, it's like when you look at a 17 homer second half for Carroll, to me, that puts you right back in a spot of confidence that he is close to the guy that we all looked at as a collective top 4, top 5 pick last year. Of course, you've got to kind of take the discount because of the struggles that he had, but I don't think his true talent, when you look at everything he's done in the minors, he's not a 231 guy. I think we just saw the floor. And if the floor is a 22 homer, 35 steal guy, you'll take that any day of the week. But in reality, he's probably a 275 type of player. And if the power is close to what he did in the second half, he's a 25, 40 type of talent. Yeah. And to double down on Elly, we kind of looked at it and said, all right, stolen base is more than addressed. Let's craft our draft accordingly. Yeah. And we definitely followed that playbook with our next hitters.
Yeah, there's a couple things I do want to quickly mention. As one, at First Pitch Arizona, which everyone needs to go to. It's just the best weekend ever. You guys got to make it at least once. I know, the two of you. It's so good. This year was Halloween, I understand, but next year it's not. Yeah. Hopefully you guys can make it. There's two things. Is one, that home runs are more scarce these days than stolen bases. So it is easier to find 30 stolen bases later on in the draft than it is home runs. And two, is that Corbin Carroll, they really addressed that second half numbers for pitchers are stickier than for hitters. And why that is, it makes sense. It's not saying that all pitchers are sticky for this, but it's that it usually comes with some sort of more significant change than their arsenal or so. That is like, okay, cool. Now they're throwing a slider now.
What I will push back on that is, and while I agree, and I've fallen into that trap plenty of times, the change with Carroll in my mind was that he got healthy. Sure. There was, we've seen shoulder injuries, especially the leading front shoulder with Tatis and Cody Bellinger, and it take a long time for those to get right. So I think there may be some change that you could weigh for putting some stock in the second half.
And he did also lower his contact as the power went up. I did feel like he became a little bit more of a free swinger, and it really just kind of benefited him. It's probably because he was just kind of hot and felt really good and just went after it, and it worked. Also, the third point really was, this is past, I think, the tier of the studs and hitters. Bryce Harper, Ozzie Albies, Pete Alonso, Jackson Merrill, Jarren Duran, Trey Turner are after. And I wouldn't really say that definitively I want any of those other ones. We'll talk about one aspect here later in kind of position choices of you went shortstop, then you went outfielder here. I believe Elly's saying it's shortstop, right? There's no,
and he'll have the eligibility.
I need to do a whole thing on this because it's hitters, guys. I'm so sorry. But he didn't play another position, did he? He's just
shortstop. No, and he was really good on the defensive metrics.
Okay.
There was some, not to get into it.
Ignore me. Just ignore me, everyone.
He was good. He was good.
But we're going to go to your third round pick. It's Matt Olson. Matt Olson, who really, I'll be honest, September was great. We needed him in September in our head-to-head leagues, and he finally woke up. And as far as first base bats go, after Olson, it's not much. It's Josh Naylor and Christian Walker. I was personally hoping he would come down to me, and I got sniped a little bit. I mean, it was either between him or my pick, Corey Seager, because I wanted a shortstop. Kind of knew you guys wouldn't take Seager, but I still wanted Olson. How'd you feel about this one? I mean, I feel like it perfectly complements your first two picks.
Yeah, like you said with the homer thing, like I think that on the safe end you could project Elly and Cruz and and Carroll for maybe a combined 45 homers as sort of a floor, I would think would be safe between the two of them. So I think we really wanted the power bat here that could be a 30 plus on the downside, a homer guy. And first base, like you said, I the last few years I want to leave the first 3 rounds with the first baseman, like that top tier first baseman. It's I know there's plenty of guys that I like down there, and like Walker, Naylor, but once you start to do that, you're one pick away from one other team taking them and you falling into a tier that you don't even want to be a part of. So I feel like that's a position that I try to focus on. And in general, I'm just buying low on the Braves offense from last year. Like everything went wrong for them. Everyone was hurt. Most players had down years. I think that Olsen could get back to, maybe not 2023 when he had 54 homers, but 2021 with 39 homers and a 270 average seems more than possible with good counting numbers for that Braves offense. Like 78 runs and 98 RBIs on that Braves offense. That's
not to mention
super
how
low.
how it was really bad in the first half, and then by mid-August through September, the end of September, he was on fire. And we just got to hope that sticks around. I mean, Van, you must be happy with it too.
Oh yeah, big time. I mean, we got our Braves bombers here because that's
right. So we'll leave
segue.
that into the next guy, Marcelo Zuna. And I'll be honest with you, I don't like him. I kind of ignore him completely personally. But yeah, he just had an absurd season. I believe 37 home runs, something along those lines, 35 plus. Ridiculous season for Zuna, and it does look like it could happen again.
Yeah, I mean this was one I had last year as well, and I totally get it on the personal side, Nick. But in terms of just the hitter, you're kind of looking at a top 12, top 15 hitter, and if you remember last year, it was that dismal April where he was like batting 070 or something like that. If you take out that April, the past 2 seasons, he's probably been a top 8 hitter, and you get the 4th round price here because of the DH eligibility, which seems like it's too extreme of a discount. There's definitely value.
I think it's also because of the DV charge and everything like that.
Sure.
Is probably what it is. But yeah, just so everyone's on the same page here. I mean, throughout the season, above a 130 process plus, I think it was peaking at like a 155 in the middle of June, and it just never let up.
99th percentile. ICR.
You probably, depending on just kind of the public opinion of him, if you just look at kind of the skills of it, he should be a second round.
Yeah, I'm drafting the back of the baseball card, not the player, not the
So we're going to move on to the 5th round. You have someone that we just want to have that kind of season again in full, and that's Mike Trout. And it's just really comes down to health, but I think in the 5th round, I was certainly considering Mike Trout or my pick, Riley Green, as the 2. And once again, you guys made the choice for me. You have to think in a 12-teamer, this is pretty great because you get Mike Trout plus whatever injury guy you get in a 12-teamer, which is a much better replacement value than your typical 15-teamers.
Yeah, I think that was actually funny. That was who you were between 2.
Because they're smart people. That's why.
And Trout. And this kind of pairs with the last pick, not to talk about them again, but I think as an industry, we are, especially when it comes to hitters, we are extremely ageist as a fantasy baseball community. And I think that leads to some values in hitters. I know it hasn't paid off for Trout because he's just been hurt so often recently. But when I first started playing fantasy extremely competitively, like my biggest advantage in the room was going for a David Ortiz util only, like he's in his age 35 season.
I knew it. I knew it.
And then JD Martinez after that. Like, I think that people run away from clogging up their util, which in this league we have 2. And I think that doesn't, like, I don't care if my util isn't available if it's one of the best hitters, in the league. If they're going to hit 300 with 30 plus homers, like I'm good with that. So I kind of like to take advantage of that and think that Trout falls more under the ageist and injury concern, which I'll sort of talk through the funny exchanges we had with Van when we were talking about pitchers and injury risks there. But just please stay healthy, play the corner, play some DH, which is kind of annoying that they got Soler.
Oh, interesting. I didn't even think about that. Yeah, definitely.
That clogs up the DH.
But yeah,
I don't know.
Trout
Give
is
him a
still
first
great.
base glove like Trout, like Harper did. Like just move him to first.
Right. I think everyone understands the how good Mike Trout is. It's just really and really I think this is appropriate because he will produce. It's just about how much. And you can be a little bit easier with finding some backup in 12-teamer, especially for a 3 outfield league in a 12-teamer, because it's just 36 guys. There usually will be someone that you'll be able to slide in there. So you can take the risk a lot easier with Trout, I believe. We're going to talk about your 6th round pick, but we're going to do that after this break. Catchers are an interesting thing this year. I'm just kidding. It is every year. I never know what to do. And I remember last year, I think I looked stupid when I took Cal Raleigh like in the 9th, and everyone was like, what are you talking about? And then you should have gotten the 20th or something, but then Cal Raleigh was great. So then I took Adley Rutschman, and in my actual PL Legacy League, and that's who you took in the 6th round. Now, I think William Contreras, Adley Rutschman, Cal Raleigh, Will Smith, these guys are generally the favorites. Maybe Shea Langelius in there. Did you guys feel that Adley Rutschman was the number one who I should have taken over William Contreras, or is there a massive gap between the others? Because it was 6th round Adley Rutschman, 7th round Yadier Diaz, who I'm sorry I forgot there. Then Cal Raleigh and Will Smith in the 11th. A lot of people will say there's so many catchers you can just wait until the end. What's your stance on this one? Van, we'll start with you.
Yeah, in hindsight, seeing like a Sal Perez and then the 10th, Cal Raleigh in the 11th, like I think there is value, at least in this draft room, on waiting. But I do think it's kind of 1 Contreras, 2 Adley in terms of pure talent. Steve and I have talked a lot about just all the speculation that he was kind of playing through injury after it was like a blistering start last year in the first half, 16 homers. I think he was hitting like 270 or something crazy. So for a catcher, that is. And this is a guy that, coming off of 2023, we were looking at him as like, no question, top 50, 60 pick overall. And he's just an Iron Man. So I guess that comes with the territory that he will play through injuries. But with that lineup and how good Adley's bat is, I think you can do a lot worse. I just, now looking back, and I know I'm jumping ahead a little bit to what would you do differently? My personal philosophy is I think this time of the draft is a pretty decent swath to grab your SP1. So like looking back at the board, I do think from like pick 65 to 90 is where I want to jump in on pitching, even though we waited a little bit longer. So I think Adley might be a touch early here, just looking at the rest of the board, but I do think I would not be surprised at all if he turned around and had a 25-30 type of home run season and got the average up from the 250 it landed on. But another one, it seems like we might have seen the floor for how good he can be.
I mean, I definitely agree with you that Adley Rutschman is going to be better in the power department in the first 3 months until July 1st. 120 process plus power was really leading the way with everything. And then once July hit, it really tanked once the injury happened. He missed a few days. It just never got back. It just got worse and worse and worse as the season went on. You have to think that there's something that happened and he can be fully healthy and fully ready to go for this upcoming year. Steve?
He got hit in the hand with a foul ball. There's
it
a great
is.
Kyle Bland tweet on June 27th, I believe
Boom.
it was.
That's it.
And he showed his process plus chart, just going, the cave or the steep, the Price is Right guy falling off the mountain. Before that foul ball off his hand, he was hitting 297, 350, 470. Like,
I felt like such a genius.
He was like establishing himself as the catcher. Like that's how good Adley was. And I think that just clearly played a role in what happened. And I normally fade catching. Last year I was like, oh my gosh, there's so many guys. Like you can get Francisco Alvarez in round 15 or 20. Like, it's so great. Like, there's so many good catchers, and like all kind of. I know there were a few good ones, specifically Contreras, but you had to pay up for him and some other guys. But it's still a mindfall. I think I would agree with the fan. Maybe we sort of just kind of panicked a little bit and filled the catcher. But hey, Adley could be the number one catcher, I think, next year. And that's not too
definitely
far of odds. I don't think.
Yeah. No, I think there's something to be said about drafting a catcher and knowing that you're not going to think about it. Like
not being on the catcher carousel and just adding a different catcher.
The worst.
It's the worst.
I had Wilson Contreras last year, and him getting hurt. I was just, what do I do now? And there were times I pretty much just had no catcher. I had Henry Davis in there at times. This is terrible.
It's a painful experience when you're.
And this is even in a 12-teamer. And again, at First Pitch Arizona, the laws of fantasy, they're saying all these funny things, and then every league has to be 2 catcher. I was like, don't do that to me. Okay. Then you got to say, like, every league has to be 20 starting pitcher. Then, I mean, what do you want? That's literally the equivalent, because I just put a top 200 starting pitchers. Okay. And that wasn't even all of them. So it'd be 212 or 240 for 224 for everybody. I mean, whatever it is, I can't remember anymore. So I see that with Elly Rutschman. I think you're very much right about him being that upper class. And I don't think you panicked, really. I think it makes sense. I do want to ask, I meant to do it at the beginning of this. I know that you were waiting on pitching, but was there a certain plan of attack for positions outside of just pitching for hitting that you were thinking about going into this? Or was it just get the best one available, Van?
I mean, I think it snuck up on us just how shallow second base feels.
Yeah.
I'll be totally honest. Steve and I we want a slugger first baseman, and that's kind of been our philosophy for a few years. I don't think the landscape's changed that much there. We didn't focus on this part of the draft. We need this position, but we definitely looked up and said, have you seen second base? Like, what are we doing there? And it wasn't my favorite spot in the draft in terms of who we got, where we got them. It was kind of like, all right, let's take our medicine. But it did feel good to grab.
Making Van one-eyed as he talks in his panel. Is just we just see one eye,
too shallow,
and half of his face.
I got my mic over here.
You got your mic over there. There you go. Okay, there's Van.
Yeah.
Sorry for everyone listening on the podcast. It's actually pretty entertaining. It's why you got to go watch this on YouTube. Okay. He focuses on your audio more than the visual, and actually I appreciate that a ton. But right, second base does sneak up. Would you have taken Albies instead of Corbin Carroll, knowing this?
I mean, I would not. I think Corbin Carroll uniquely could crack top 5 in a way that Albies could never. But I do think, we were looking at Semien around the time we got Trout. I think that's something we got the rest of the offseason to figure out what that sweet spot is. But I am jealous of the Ketel Marte that you grabbed second round.
Hey, well, thank you so much. You would have taken him instead of Corbin Carroll.
I think so. I mean, Steve might fight me on that one, but after Elly, I think you got a surplus of speed with Corbin, whereas Ketel, you're addressing probably the toughest position.
Yes, that's what I do in my draft. I'm just like, I don't want to deal. Just don't. I literally just say I don't want to deal. The more that I can draft players where I don't have to touch the wire for hitting is great. I will get no pitching if it means that I don't have to touch hitting. That's pretty much the part where I start going after pitching, is where I don't feel like I have a need necessarily to fill. And Steve, I gotta say, you guys filled up third base. That's another one that does clear up pretty quickly. I was debating so hard in the 5th round with Riley Green. Do I want Royce Lewis, Mark Vientos, or Riley Green? My plan was to go, okay, Riley Green this time, and then if one survives, I'll go Royce Lewis, because I think he's going to be drafted higher. And then maybe I can sneak Mark Vientos after. And I almost got away with it if it weren't for these meddling wins above fantasy nerds. Mark Vientos, he's kind of dope, isn't he, Steve?
He is awesome. 27 homers in 454 plate appearances. That is top echelon, league leading potential power.
Oh yeah.
And being in New York as you are, Nick, Vientos always seemed like an interesting prospect, but he sort of seems how Brett Beatty is now. Not to make this a Mets prospect, but it's
oh no, don't do
is this guy ever going to figure it out? And then it sort of just clicked. There's a few guys at Jet Settler over at Baseball Prospectus, I believe it is, sort of was like, yeah, sometimes players make adjustments that you can't predict happening.
Oh yeah.
And Mark Vientos like started to pull the ball in the air when he never did before, and tapped into his raw power in game and became this on a plate appearance basis one of the best power hitting third basemen in the league. So I was more than happy to get that. To sort of touch back on your point before, I am very much, I want the best hitter, and I'll deal with my position eligibility after, to an extent. And Van has kind of reeled me in with that. Like, I think in the mock draft last year, I did like 3 outfielders in the first 4 picks. I'm like,
No,
yeah, I
that was
cannot
rough.
do this. Like, yes, I
Yeah.
like all these hitters, but the game is to play players
Right.
at the position.
Right.
So I sort of try to balance that, and I think Vientos was a perfect balance of that, because we now have our corners covered in the first 6 rounds, 7 rounds with players that we like.
I think you have to, as penance for that terrible mock draft, you have to call your podcast Wins Above Fantasy Positions, because these are the wins above the average fantasy position. That's why you go for second baseman early and fill it up.
Yeah.
Okay. Mark Vientos gets a seal of approval for me. I think he's going to be a
Nice.
stud. You're going to see him next year in the second round. And I also love Royce Lewis. I think both of them are just such pure hitters. People think that I am only a pitching analyst. That is false. I just don't spend any time to have any recent knowledge on hitters as like you guys do. But watching guys, I can certainly scout who's a good hitter, who's a bad one. And Mark Vientos and both Mark Vientos and Royce Lewis and Riley Green, I had to watch a lot of games facing those guys. I watched the starting pitcher, but I'm aware of who is hitting, and the at bats against those guys are rough.
Like, there's guys that you can't
really
get away with a mistake with, right? Like,
right. You get fearful. The confidence falls. It doesn't. I see so many at bats that are debilitating, or it's just like, all right, you're just gonna do this. This is done. There's a popular clip of me with Cole Reagans against Jeremy Pena, and it's just like, yeah, you just destroyed him. Like, this is the best thing ever. But you don't really see those against those guys as much. And then when Dez, I oh, come on, Vientos, don't swing at that. Like, you're better than that. Like, that's how I feel, as opposed to, yeah, you're not good. It's no, you are better, right? And identifying that and actually subconsciously feeling feeling their confidence in front of you is a huge deal. It's kind of like how we knew that Big Christmas was going to hit that home run. Like, you saw him at the plate. Like, if he had a pitch, he was going to hit it. You knew it. It was just there. You feel it with Judge all the time, Tani. Like, there's a way of sensing this, that we just watch these guys and we know
it's like
that
a baseball sixth sense.
Right. It's like how they're swinging, how they're, the confidence in every move. Is it deliberate or not? Yeah. Vientos and Royce Lewis and Riley Green are really good. And that's just me being the old guys in Moneyball. But yeah, a big seal of approval there. I almost gave one to Adley. But I'm not fully decided on the other catchers yet. So I can't.
I think it's hard. I think it's hard to give a seal of approval on a catcher that early, even like if it is.
I mean, I gave it to me for William Contreras. I'm just kidding.
I would.
Joking. Oh, nice. Thank you. Would you have taken him? No, you would have taken Ozuna, definitely.
Yeah, I think it's just I just don't take catchers that early. Yeah.
So we're gonna move on to the 8th round, where you went and got your 3rd outfielder instead of addressing second baseman, because there's no second baseman to get, and you didn't want to take a pitcher, so you took Lawrence Butler. Talk about that. Sorry, almost got it out. Almost got the whole thing out before I sneezed. Okay,
and bless Lawrence Butler. I mean, we're looking at a guy cleaned up the plate discipline this year, and talk about second half improvements. The power unlocked, and he kind of put it all together this year. And in just 125 games, pretty much went 20-20 with a 260 average. Some of his pop was like, stop what you're doing and go look at the homer on Twitter. He had some that were like absolute missiles. And yeah, the jump in hard contact this year was 35th in the majors. So basically, we saw Lawrence Butler break out 87th percentile ICR. Like I said, he cut his strikeout rate by 3 ticks. Again, this is a range where I think you could jump in on pitching, but really like Butler at age 24 with the improved plate skills to on a full season flirt with like 30-20, 30-25. There's just nothing that looks like it should regress. It looks like this is the player that he is. And yeah, we figured why not jump in, finish out outfield, and get another really good power speed guy here in Butler.
Yeah, you guys get a seal of approval. I missed the Butler. I had the opportunity and I just completely whiffed. And Lawrence Butler is dope. It makes us feel dope.
I think there's another sort of, it wasn't a top prospect, sort of broke out of nowhere. I think there's a pullback on what happened, just in general. And I mean, to plug our Kyle's PLV projections, Butler's projected for 24 homers, 22 stolen bases with 260 average, like essentially the same thing. And I don't see a reason
Not
why
more.
he wouldn't be.
Right. That's like the floor of it without the track record, really. Right. You don't, when someone has a season like Lawrence Butler just did in the second half, really only, you can't really just say, oh, that's what he is for a full season. That is the projections regressing that to a solid outfielder with clear upside for more than that.
I don't have a list, but I'm sure it's short because I didn't do this. I wish I did. But a guy with an 11% barrel rate and under a 25% strikeout rate, I'm sure that list
that's really
is short.
His power plus at a moment when he was having that ridiculous moment in by the start of September was a 150 power plus, which is 50% better than the average hitter, which is nuts. So you get seal of approval there for Lawrence Butler. And then we go to the 9th round where you finally start to go after pitching. And the first one that you took, and I do want to mention, this is before I put out my top 200. The staff did not know it unless they got really sneaky and had editing powers and went into my article, which I don't know if you guys did.
No, we did.
I don't think you did, because you took Grayson Rodriguez ahead of some other guys that I had ranked ahead of him. Why Grayson Rodriguez?
I think this may be not to like take the opposite of a victory lap for this. This might be my biggest regret here, going him over a few of the guys that went after. We were sniped on Yamamoto. That's who.
That was such a good pick. Oh my gosh!
I
saw that happening. I was like, oh man, but I have a Shane McClanahan at like 6, so I can't not do.
We had a hilarious text thread too, like debating. We were like Yamamoto, yep, Yamamoto, and then we look and we're like, whoops, like there you go.
And we also had a rule: we were not taking a picture before you did. That was
I see. But then I took it in the 8th round.
Yeah,
so then
we went 9th.
We could have there. That could be a regret.
Yeah.
I mean, I'll tell you this right now. There's no way anyone here is getting Yamamoto in the 9th round of any 12 teamer in March. And there's no way that anyone is getting Shane McClanahan in the 9th round. Assuming, of course, what is going to happen, which is going to be completely normal and look absolutely fine in the spring. And then there you go, Shane McClanahan, Shazamo. So he took Grayson Rodriguez, and Grayson Rodriguez isn't fully healthy. To be fair, but we are expecting him to be all good to go for next year. And why Grayson instead of like Joe Ryan, Max Fried, who you did go for next round, Aaron Nola, Bailey Ober, other guys that are really popular to take ahead of Grayson Rodriguez?
I feel like he has the most opportunities for improvement. He has such a wide arsenal. Like, as you hammered home, like it's just like get your changeup down and your fastball up, and like when he does that, he shows flashes of being an ace. To steal a line from my partner here, like he likes to look at the game logs, and with Grayson's game logs, you see those days that he's on with the 10 strikeout, 11 strikeout games. Now, it wasn't as consistent as we hoped for last year. I had a ton of shares of Grayson last year as like sort of a guy in this range that I was hoping would take the leap. And injuries have sort of held him back from that, on top of like not fully utilizing his arsenal. But the stuff across the board, like I feel like there is tons of opportunity for Grayson to take that next step. Like it's, I think Sarah says it a lot. Yeah. Like if you have the opportunity in the arsenal, like one of those pitches, it's more opportunities for a pitch to take a step. And I think that Grayson's stuff, having 5 pitches with above average stuff plus,
man.
is
I just
that building block.
I want to jump in
Yeah, go
on
ahead,
this one
man.
too. Well, just it seems like more and more extension is king, and like the 7.5 feet with a swing and strike 96 fastball, like that plays like it's 100. And to me, it's like when you look at it, why was he throwing the curve so much and struggling with it when the slider seems like a better pitch? Like maybe that's where you're at, Steve. Is like it seems like it's right in front of him on how to take the step into like a top 10 SP. He gets volume. He threw 163. He's on a winning team in Baltimore. Like he feels like you wouldn't be shocked if he was a top 10 SP by the end of this year.
So here's the thing. I keep going back and forth on Grayson Rodriguez. I remember in season that like I didn't realize how bad the whip was. It's 124 for the year.
Yeah.
It actually hurt you in a 12-teamer.
Mm-hmm.
It dragged you down because sure you can say, no, that's like average. You don't want average to win a league. You cannot just like sit and be and content with necessarily average in this, right? It's below average also. And PLV is so high. Why is it so high? Because as you mentioned, man, extension is king. The reason extension is king though, is you have to have something to play off of the heater with extension. If you just have extension on the heater and that's it, you don't have something good, then it's not enough. Gavin Williams needs more, for example, for him. And Logan Gilbert, he's got his absurd slider. That's great.
Mm-hmm.
Garrett Crochet has his absurd cutter. And Grayson doesn't quite have his thing. And what I'm noticing is he actually has a high strike rate, Grayson Rodriguez, on both the changeup and the slider, both well over 60%, but they're not down. And what is going on is guys are just gearing up for the fastball and trusting that they can make contact with the slider or the changeup.
Like location wise, you mean they're not
right?
down.
They're just looking high heater the entire time. It doesn't have a lot of vert. They're timed up for it. They're able to hit it. And then when the slider or the changeup come in, they just they're able to adjust enough to get it because it's close. It's near where they're going for with the heater. And they just slow it down enough and keep the bat where it is, right? And it's my own like ridiculous little theory about the best hitters in baseball are the ones who are able to stop their bat best, because everyone's swinging until they're not. And then those who can stop the swing are the ones that actually can then also have their A swing without also selling out as much. But anyway, so Grayson needs a cutter. Or a sinker. I mean, he throws like 2% sinkers. When you have so much extension, it's the thing to lean into the most is to throw things that look exactly like your changeup and clearly exactly like your four-seamer. The changeup, I think, isn't enough. There's something that's not really.
Why does that have such good like stuff grades and looks so nasty when it's on and like pitching ninja gifts? Yeah. Because
when he executes it right, he's inconsistent when he throws it. Yeah. I mean, it's to me, it's that simple. It's going all in these different directions. Sometimes it's just like right down the middle, it like floats in there. Sometimes it's perfectly placed down. Some guys have changeups like Bailey Ober and Cody Bradford, who have a high extension four-seamer, but then really play off of that changeup perfectly. And it's hard to really discern it. Grayson Rodriguez doesn't have a secondary that is as hard of a pitch to really discern. And it's also at 83, which I think is honestly too far of a velocity gap. That's a 15 mile per hour one.
Play that. I'm sure that
helps guys make the adjustment in time to hit it.
Yeah.
As opposed to with a high extension, generally means that, you're getting up on velocity. So actually think of that change it more as 85, 86, right? And like with Garrett Crochet, he's got this cutter that just looks exactly the same and just it moves off of it and bam, you don't change timing on your swing. If you try to slow it down at all, it's already too slow now. So I think that Grayson doesn't quite have the arsenal that takes advantage of that amazing high extension four-seamer that is one of the higher ranked PLV four-seamers. It's 98th percentile because of that velocity, because also is flat and he throws it upstairs. Like it should be so successful, but it can't do it on its own. So you're right. I do think that Grayson has that extra step to hit. It's not just like, you try to do all these things and whatever. So this could very well play out exactly as you want. I have no real qualms with it. The only thing I will say is that if you just flipped your 9th and 10th rounds, I'll be a lot happier, because what you should do if you wait until the 9th round is you don't go for volatility. You go for the SP2 floor. You can find, if you're searching for an SP1 potential guy, they are there, but it's going to be harder and harder to find a well above average floor as you keep going in your draft. And you have to have something to stand on, some foundation that's just like, all right, he's not going to take my season. Like Grayson Rodriguez still has a little bit of that after 124 whip last.
especially
Max
with the injury
Fried,
concern.
Max Fried's fantastic. Sure, you'll hate yourself by like April 20th, and you'll love yourself for the next 5 months. Okay, that's the only pushback I have on that. But like, yeah, Grayson Rodriguez really shouldn't be going in the 9th round, and the fact that he is, it's just like don't spend on pitching early. Jeez, sorry, I said I was gonna be quick with this, but I discovered the Grayson Rodriguez thing, and it was fun.
Yeah.
I can't help myself. All right, we're gonna talk more pitching because obviously these guys need to get them. They only have one starting pitching now. It's already the 9th round. We're going to the 10th round, and we'll talk about who both of them, he picked in the 10th round after this break. Hey, who is that picture? Well, it's Max Fried. Max Fried, oh, so safe, so wonderful. I already told you guys. You already knew it. You didn't even need to, like, Nick, we already mentioned it before the ad break. Who picked this one, Max Fried? Who demanded it?
I think we went to the same thought track that you were just saying, as we wanted the high floor. We were both in agreement and we've liked Fried for a few years. I think what we saw last year was kind of surprising on like the walk rate tick up. So I'm not sure I'm really looking at him as like a true 116 whip guy. The ERA looked about right. It was just like under the hood. It looked like his high lock increased on the four seamer, but so did his walk rate with the pitch. So I don't know if that was just like an approach change and he was missing his spot, which led to more walks. But when you're looking at the guy who has like the highest ground ball rate in the majors or one of, it doesn't really matter because the hitters that reach base are kind of inconsequential. He gets out of jams. The sinker's a little bit hittable, but they're all ground ball pitches for Fried, and you just know what you're going to get. It's not going to be a ton of strikeouts, but it's going to be great ratios and on a team that can get wins. So we went right back to that mindset of like, okay, we better shore up the floor for our rotation since we waited so long, and Fried made a ton of sense here.
Yeah, no, I mean, that's it, guys. Don't overlook Fried. I know he missed some time last year, so he had to ramp up twice. He always has to ramp up like a little extra longer than others. But no, Fried is such a lovely ratio wins floor. You're going to get like 170 strikeouts. Like, be super happy with Fried. Not much more to say there. Finally, 11th round, though. Oh, gosh, it's a second baseman. Oh, man. And when you guys were starting to figure out the second base stuff, was this the guy that you had circled, and were there other backups? It's Xander Bogaerts in the 11th round. Steve?
It was a guy that just is sort of someone that's there for us to take later. I feel like Bogaerts has kind of been that, and just a safe, projectable, oatmeal-y, to steal a term
man,
from
he's the
Rates and
Toby of
Barrel.
hitters,
Like,
guys.
yeah, he is the Toby of hitters.
Don't draft Tobies.
And
what's the point?
At second base, like
maybe a Holly.
I struggle between grabbing, like, if you do wait on second or whatever position it is now for hitters, I struggle between either, okay, let's take a Xander Bogaerts, or just wait till the 18th or 20th round and try and hit on a lottery ticket. But in season, I'm more confident in finding those hitters and replacing that. Even if it is having to replace like an 11th round Xander Bogaerts, like, I'm okay with that. Like, at this point, like, for me, it's our last starting position hitter, I think, other than maybe a util spot. So it is someone that I'm going to churn and burn relatively early if Bogaerts is hurt or looks worse than the 260, 300, 381 than last year, which would be kind of hard to do. But I think it's a safe, projectable 12 to 15 homers, 10 steals, 260 average, and a good lineup. Like, I'm okay with that being our, oh dang, we have to take a second
and our oh dang.
Yeah.
So I'm gonna say this. Just like it is with pitchers, the reason I don't draft Tobies is because it's very replaceable on the waiver wire. And the most valuable thing early in the season are roster spots. And I think especially for hitters rather than pitchers, it's a lot harder to know when they're going to actually be great, especially for ones that aren't just pure studs. If you draft Xander Bogaerts, you don't really know when the hot streak is going to be that's going to make up the season, whereas when the 2 weeks is going to hit 3-4 home runs, right? It's not necessarily going to be right out of the gate. And I very much suggest, if you do not fill in a spot early on, and you get to like a guy you expect to replace on the wire during the year,
Don't.
you are so much better off just waiting and getting your lottery ticket early, or just, literally last pick, then get all the other things that you like more. Because I'm seeing in the 11th round, for example, if you're trying to shore up your rotation, you could have taken Jared Jones. You could have gone for Hunter Brown. For for closer, which you guys don't have yet, you could have gone Felix Batista, which is, I think, a lovely pick in the 12th round, as he's coming back from Tommy John, should be ready to go. Ryan Walker with San Francisco, Luke Weaver. To me, this one is, you can get Gleyber Torres later on or whatever, and be like, this is fine for
what
the
is
first
the
week to
difference
find
between
something.
Gleyber Torres
And
Xander
honestly,
Bogaerts?
you could argue that it'll be better for Gleyber Torres, just because who knows what those first 2 weeks will be. As long as you get a starter who is not, you're going to get some RBI, some runs, maybe a home run or two or whatever, then it's not really going to be a big difference as you're going to be looking anyway. Unless you feel like, no, Xander Bogaerts is actually going to be better. He's not just that kind of oatmeal thing in the 11th round. Van, do you feel the same way, or are you kind of leaning more like, no, I like this Xander Bogaerts pick in the 11th?
I got on my notes here. Nothing to write home about.
Xander.
That's it.
Yeah.
I think that's a great point with hitters. Like, you need to be more patient, because the weather's cold in April. Like, I remember tweeting out how horrible offense is in the early months, and like that takes time, and you kind of are almost pigeonholing yourself by taking a Xander Bogaerts or a Toby of hitters, just waiting for that to turn around. And it maybe, yes, it eventually will, but you're right, that may not come till August. And let me tell you, if it takes that long, that turnaround is not going to happen on your team. For a player like that. So I think that's a great point.
Hitters? Who is that? Is there? Do you guys have a name for it?
Xander Bogaerts was too good in his prime to be the Toby of hitters. I don't want to do that. Yeah,
he's not Xander the Mander.
Yeah.
He was Xander the Mander.
Yeah.
Now he's Xander the Senior.
That's a good one to solve for, though. The Toby of hitters. We'll work on.
Yeah, I'm sure that the batter's box crew has come up with it. Maybe Scott Chu, of course. I gotta figure that out. We're gonna move on to the 12th round. And I like this pick. This is Kodai Senga. Now, I will mention, I actually had Kodai Senga in the top 25 initially, and then I realized that he was still kind of hurt when he pitched in the playoffs, and he wasn't quite healed, and now his outlook is not as clean cut as I wanted it to be. But Kodai Senga pitching healthy is a fantastic pick in the 12th round. Van, how do you feel about it?
I loved it. Fastball cutter, and who cares about the postseason struggles, all that stuff. But I do want to flip a remix here because Steve loves Senga, and I can talk about the next one that I was
all right, here we go. What do you got, Steve?
I do love Kodai Senga. I loved him last year, especially when there was that early season discount when it was like, all right, Senga may miss the first few weeks and end up being more than that, and sort of just everything that could go wrong. Murphy's Law season for him. Everything that could go wrong would go wrong. Yes, it is concerning see him pitch in the postseason and really not look healthy, but the Mets are in the postseason trying to win the World Series. Like, that was the only reason why. Like, we wouldn't, like, had the Mets missed the playoffs or lost that doubleheader game, like, we would be much higher, I think, on Senga, because we wouldn't have seen that and would have been like, oh yeah, and he's starting up his regular throwing program in November, like, good to go. We just saw sort of them try to squeeze out those few innings in the playoffs, which didn't look great, and understand could leave a sour taste in your mouth. But yeah, I just loved everything about Senga's 2023, like, especially like from like May on, when he seemed like he figured out like how to pitch in major league games. He truly became like an ace for that second half, of really 2/3 of the season. 29 games started, the 29% strikeout rate. The walk rate's a little high, and you're probably going to have to deal with that anyway, but it's sort of the opposite of Fried, that like those walks may not hurt you as much because he can just strike out the next three batters, even if he does lead off.
Sure.
Splitter.
I hope Senga is good here. I will mention Carlos Rodon, Sonny Gray, Yusei Kikuchi, Sean Manaea, Robbie Ray. I'm going around there. And outside of Sean Manaea and Robbie Ray, I have all those guys ranked ahead of Kodai, but it's pretty close. I think they're all in the same tier. Sonny Gray is actually one above because I think, again, for your team at this point, I probably would go Sonny just because it's safer.
Yeah, that's fair.
And
That's fair.
when you are coming from behind, like for example, for me, McClanahan, Joe Ryan, Sandy Alcantara, I felt like with 3 of them, I had my foundations 8, 9, and 10. So I could take a chance with Jared Jones in the 12th. Right. But if I didn't feel that way, I probably would have gone for Sonny Gray of the ones left. I'm looking at all the other future rounds. Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Oh man, I made a bad pick or two. Oh, I hate Andrew Painter in the 17th round. Oh,
what? No.
terrible.
No.
Well, at the time, I thought he was going to start the year, and everyone was like, Andrew Painter's the number
I mean,
one
he's been tearing up the Arizona
Mhm.
Fall League.
Yeah.
So
I listen to my podcast for that one, guys. Yeah, I don't like it. No 6 feet extension. Not good in pitch metrics in the fastball. Command wasn't there. 96, sure. 96, 97, great. But like, if you don't have that fastball that overpowers and does great, I don't want you. And also should be up by June. And it's just, I'm not going to do that. That's stupid, Nick. Why were you being so stupid? Okay. We should have gone for Bobby Miller. My gosh, how could you do that? We're going to move on here to round 13. And I'm not going to say that I love this one either, but I understand it. It's Reynaldo Lopez, who obviously had a ridiculous year as a starter. I'm not going to say the 2 ERA because it was 1.99 as he went 1 extra inning in relief and allowed a run. So 1.99 ERA in about 134 innings. Insane. Just like absolutely nuts. We don't talk about this enough. It's not going to happen again.
No.
But you're thinking, yeah, it's still going to be good enough, man.
Yeah, it is. This one feels like the one that the discount is baked in. Like any of the regression on the ERA is baked in that he's going pick 149 here. I really like Raylo. I had him in a ton of leagues. Just the fact that he's just pounding the zone with a good fastball, solid IVB, solid location. But the most important thing I think that a lot of people have missed, because I think you get the sense that he's like this high floor guy and that maybe there wasn't a ton of swing and miss. The improvement of the slider in the last 2 months and the fact that he went to it more and more often. Steve talked about game log. He's a good game log one. But in August, he had a 34% strikeout rate. In September, a 46% strikeout rate.
Yeah, that was funny. We were all like, he's not going to pitch a lot when he comes back. And then you just had like 10 strikeout games.
Yes,
in
after
like,
the injury. Yeah,
no!
Exactly. And that's where it's like, you look at all this and it feels like where there might be regression on ratios. I think there might be improvement on the K rate that we saw. Great team. And yeah, I think he's a perfectly suitable SP4 for us here.
Yeah, I mean, it's again, the other guys after Lugo, Jeffrey Springs, I'd rather have Raylo. He's right there. He's probably the highest one I have, say for Shane Baz, who I do like more. But I think Raylo's fine. And we're getting to the point of you might be dropping them. So having 3 guys that you feel like you're going to hold on to, but could I sing it? Who knows? It's a little teetering. I would have been more aggressive in the 11th round and gone like Justin Steele. Oh, that would have been so nice. Oh man, that would have been perfect.
We were really close to executing this like exactly the way, and that Bogarts pick really did get in the way. Hey, it's a lesson learned. That is something I'm going to keep in my back pocket.
Unbelievable. I'm giving you guys such a hard time for this. Going to the 14th round. You finally got a closer. It's Kirby Yates, but is he a closer? Because he's a free agent now. Steve?
I did not realize that, and I think you're right.
He's a relief pitcher to us in our database. So he is a free agent.
Okay, so yes, please sign with the Rangers and be the closer.
I mean, look, when it comes to these mock drafts, trying to predict closers is the hardest part.
Yeah.
And we get much more clarity come March. You just kind of reserve it as like, I'm going for a relief pitcher here. And whoever happens to be, sure. So all good there. We're going to move on to, and by the way, Kirby Yates, he's great. He's a solid closer if he does close somewhere and get signed by them. Rick Graham likes him from what I remember. Sorry, Rick Graham. If you're like, no, I don't. Just go to talk to Rick Graham. Does Rick Graham like him? We'll find out. We go to Gavin Williams in the 15th round. Oh, talk to me about Gavin Williams here. Somebody tell me.
I mean, this is the Logan Gilbert reincarnate here of great fastball, velo, extension, needs that second pitch to take a big step forward. And the control is obviously an issue, but you could see that path to acedom if and it's a big if he can find that second pitch. The cutter is really good, doesn't throw it enough. So there's potential there, but obviously good system to be in. And, the pedigree, there's a lot of things that it feels like at pick 173, it's a pretty good dart.
Seal of approval. I would prefer Shane Baz, but seal of approval, Gavin Williams, absolutely adore it. I think the four seamer with 96, 97 and that 7+ foot extension, the cutter is the perfect match for it. Just started throwing it more a little bit later. Had some games with the cutter just came alive, and it's like, this is the guy.
Yeah.
And really just had a wasted season. Really got delayed with injury, had to wait too long to get healed. Finally got healed. And now we're going to see him actually get the offseason he should have and Cruz in for next year. I had him inside my top 40 entering last year before the injury, and I don't really see why we shouldn't be considering him the same light right now, especially with the cutter adaptation, which I think is better than the slider that he had prior. So seal of approval. We're going to go to the 16th round. It's Jackson Jobe. And I get it. 16th round, you're taking the chance. We don't really know what we're going to get from him. I was actually surprised to see he's a very low extension guy too, which is no, I don't want that. I'm curious also, not being a reliever, if the Tigers are going to say, look, okay, fine, you're going to start with us. It's going to be great out of the gate. I don't know what we're going to see, but I mean, Jackson Jobe seems like the number one pitching prospect in baseball, or at least in the top 5. Steve, you feel good about this one, the 16th round?
I do. I feel that he is, if not the best pitching prospect, top, like you said, top 5 at least. And the fact that he threw major league innings for Detroit in a playoff race and had playoff innings, that gives me more confidence that he is going to be up, or at least have a legitimate shot in spring training to make the rotation. And the Tigers, while they do have Skubal and others and just made the playoffs, like they have a rotation spot that if he pitches well in spring training, he could absolutely win that job. And that they got the taste of that playoffs. Like when teams get that, like you start to look for the futures and like, it's like, all right, now we have Skubal. Now we could back him up with, Jackson Jobe, if he reaches his potential. I think that teams start to get aggressive when that happens. And we saw that with the Tigers. And I think that it's a more than fair shot to take this late in the draft on a guy with this.
No, definitely. I think, you're going to see Jackson Jobe start this year, if not out of the gate.
Mm-hmm.
I'll be honest with you. I'm surprised. You have ALDS in Cleveland. ALDS in Cleveland, a man named Jobe, and he didn't blow it as a reliever this time. I was like, oh man, we're the midgets. The coming. I actually also just came up with my SP Roundup pun inevitably for Jackson Jobe. It's not Book of Job. Come on, guys. I always know what the number one pun is because I think of it instantly and I never choose it. You can't. I'm better than that. No, it's Job, Champ, or Lamb. Joba Chamberlain.
Oh man. Wow.
It's there. It's right there.
That was the first one that came to mind.
That was
the second. The second. We can't use the first. We can't.
Okay. That was not the first. I was the one. I was like, all right, I got to make this work with Chamberlain, and then that's Chamberlain.
Oh man, that's so good.
Maybe there's an Alex Chamberlain pun in here that may work.
Oh no, that's too niche. Unfortunately, I'm so sorry. I wish it weren't too niche, but it's too niche. Alex Chamberlain, I love you, man. One of these days, I'll actually convince Alex Chamberlain to do a regular podcast on here. He's got like the best voice, and he just won't. It's fine.
A WAF guest, Alex Chamberlain. There you go.
Wild guest. Yes.
No,
that's right.
Yeah.
WAF.
Yeah.
Is that what you guys say? WAF?
Yeah. And wins above fans.
And of course, all the fans are waffles,
Yeah,
which is
exactly.
wonderful. I hope they have their waffle hats watching your show.
Yeah. Waffle House.
Waffle House hats. Yes. This is a Waffle House. We're going to talk about your 17th round pick of a guy who's going to be changing positions next year. And we'll talk about him after this break. Yeah, so T Fitz not going to be a shortstop, but that doesn't matter for your fantasy leagues because he's already qualified as shortstop for next year. How do you feel about this one? Why go after Fitz? You already got Elly de la Cruz.
Listen, this was all me. I could take this one. For richer or poorer, this is a flag plant for me and
Oh, boy.
Fitzgerald. As fast as Elly de la Cruz, starting there. So then right after that, you're like, okay, the homer run he went on in August is
Ooh.
just not sustainable, especially in San Francisco. Can't happen. This guy has done it. I encourage everybody to go look at what he's done in the minors. He hasn't had a ISO lower than like 230 since like before COVID. And when you look at all of his StatCast numbers, it just looks like it doesn't all add up.
Yes.
And to me, he fits the perfect mold of the guys like Chris Bryant, Bregman, Marcus Semien, where Isaac Paredes, where it's pull fly ball hitters. And like the numbers just continue to get more and more impressive. If he would have qualified, he would have been 12th in the league in pull rate. He does not hit grounders. He'd be 15th in the majors on ground ball to fly ball rate. Like I'm not saying because he strikes out way too much that he's like a fantasy all-star, but I think he will turn heads again this year after all of the hype from what he did in August, because I think everyone thinks it was a fluke. He's going to be a bust, but this is a guy with Elly's speed who, in my opinion, could be like a 20 home run type of guy. So given playing time,
more than that from what you're saying. Absolutely.
even if he hits 230, I mean, that's looking like kind of an
league average right now, guys.
So I'm interested in Fitzgerald. I think he's going to fall a lot, and I think there's a lot to like, despite how frosty all the sliders look.
I absolutely love it. Sign me up. I try and I fail to circle the certain guys that I want to actually keep an eye on. That could be like those hitters who could be something come drafts later, because I'm so bad at keeping tabs on it. And the thing that I think we all forget often, I'm prefacing this so much, this is bad, is that hitters are not the same guy after the rookie year. And strikeout rate in particular is the one that generally gets better. It's not a surprise. You see more of the stuff in the majors. You adapt your skills. Your decisions get better as you see more major league sliders and more fastballs at this velocity. You understand the zone better. You just need more reps. It's what happens. And if you're telling me the big flaw of Tyler Fitzgerald so far in his short career isn't that he can hit the ball harder than he can run the base as well, is that he's striking out a little bit too much. Okay, that's not a death sentence. It is if you're 6-7 years in, but if you're 1 year in, it's not. Sure, I'm not saying he's going to be a 18%, 20% strikeout guy, but that becomes like a 25%. Like that is a huge difference, and that's very, very feasible. So those are the kind of things I go for. Now, if you're saying, oh, Nick, he's going to get a lot more power, a lot harder, a lot more difficult to find and adjust for. Oh, he's going to steal all these bases. That's going to be difficult. But you're saying it's going to be decisions getting better. That's actually something that that can change over time and contact as well. Contact rate is really actually the one that is bad. Decision is kind of normal. It's just about contact with the ball. It's kind of like Matt Wallner, who did anyone take in this? Because I love Matt Wallner.
Yeah,
and
why not? That is a player that I wanted to get to.
Matt Wallner wasn't drafted though, was he?
Should have been.
No, I know. He's the same kind of thing. Big power. Just needs to get a little bit better on the strikeout rate. And when it does, it's a breakout city. So just like take a chance on that. If he's not doing it, then move on. Draft guys that you can make quick decisions on. So you don't take Xander Bogaerts. Okay. Ryan Nelson is the next guy. I love Ryan Nelson. I got to say, I dig this one. Is he around the place I would draft him relative to everyone else? Yeah. I dig this pick. But do you? Steve, let's go with you.
This is, I need to defer again. Van convinced me on Tyler Fitzgerald. This is a Van guy again. We talked a bunch about him in season, but I'll pass the baton for him for this one.
Well, again, love the extension, love the fastball, the IVB. And yeah, just what he showed in the last couple months where he was throwing that fastball more. He had the 14th best K-minus BB in the last couple months. The four-seamer jumped from 49 to 60%. So I love when guys are making the obvious tweaks and adjustments that look like, oh, that makes sense. I mean, that pitch 86th percentile on IVB against. And yeah, with that extension throwing almost 96 on the velocity, which was as high as it's been all year. So for a 26-year-old, again, still kind of probably a pitch away from it being a sustainable, like season long jump, but he feels like another type of Gavin Williams that you're getting, 4 rounds later. And yeah, what we already saw it, right? So it's like, if he can just kind of continue that, and we've all been waiting for this Ryan Nelson kind of results breakout because we've all liked the stuff, and he's been kind of an industry darling for it feels like 3 years. So to see it click and then to see him in the 18th round, it seems like a steal around some of the names.
Yeah, it's a little strange. I'm just kind of right now looking at the game log and pitch list. And you guys don't do this. This is literally, I made this game log so that I can do my research. And we made it so that you can look up pitch performance by a date inside of a season super fast. Our developers worked all year to really make it so that there's no lag in between doing splits, lefty, righty. You can see any kind of thing on a pitch over a specific time frame. It's the best. And I felt like I would see better from his 4-seamer starting July 2nd. But I'm not. 10% swing strike rate in that time and 61% usage, while the cutter was fine. High strike rate, 38% ICR, and slider was a 21% ICR, but it was only 10% usage and really just surprised guys. And was utilized more in 2-strike counts. That's a low ICR because it was out of the zone and everything like that. What's strange about Nelson is he's a step behind Williams in that the extension's under 7. It's not above 7. It's under 6.8, which is above average, but it's not grotesquely above average. And once you see the 7, then you get like, okay, yeah, now we're talking. Now we're good. Mm-hmm. I know it sounds little, be like, oh man, Nick, that's like a couple inches or whatever off. Like, yeah, that's a big deal. That isn't really quite that threshold yet. But he was just, I remember talking to Eno being like, Eno goes to me and goes, how is Nelson doing? Like, I don't get this. I don't get it. And I don't really either. It's 4-seamers that just are in the zone and it's just, here it is, whatever. And the cutter does come in at 91. And that is a big deal. You have a cutter and a 4-seamer, high strike cutter. And those two are just making it difficult to figure out. That's the game plan for the most part. I thought I would see more than like 20% cutters. It was only 15% of that later stretch, and still just 61% 4-seamers, which makes us like, why aren't you just kind of sitting on that 4-seamer a little bit more? The attack angles average, the IVB is 17, which is good, like very, very good. Don't get me wrong, 80th percentile. But it's not, to me, it's like, okay, but it needs something else. And something else wasn't there, but he still had the results. So for me, for Ryan Nelson, I actually feel like I'm in a spot where if I don't see any improvement in the changeup, really the cutter and the slider, then I'm probably going to be out if it isn't going as really great in April, right? I'm not going to hold on too tightly. But if I am seeing that cutter that I did see in the spring, which was so nice, oh gosh, that's the one I was saying to everybody in First Pitch Florida, being like, Ryan Nelson looks so much better than Tyler McGill. Don't take Tyler McGill. Take Ryan Nelson. And then Frank Stanfield took Tyler McGill after I told him to take Ryan Nelson. I was like, what are you doing? Oh my gosh. Take Ryan Nelson in your NL only. He's regretting that now. Okay. But no, I really hope this works out well. And it's really just about that next pitch. If it doesn't get that, no, but this is the 18th round, and that's what you want to do. Good decisions. So I dig this one. Spencer Arguetti's of the same vein, who went just after. I want to give Seals, but it's like, no, this is like the next AVP for me. So it's just like down the line. It's not like you jumped ahead of it, and all of a sudden like that. But solid pick. I like it. 2 closers, Porter Hodge and Lucas Erceg. Is there reasons why you went after these, Steve?
I think they are very good closers. I think they're very good pitchers.
Good choices.
That have closer roles that, I think in the same vein as starting pitchers, like this is you're not going to get these closers in the 18th and 19th round, whatever it is.
Specifically, like what the heck?
Yeah. And Porter Hodge was a little bit later on, but he really did steal that role for the Cubs and look really good in it in August and September. So maybe a little bit less of a track record, but Kansas City traded for Erceg and like essentially said, "Hey, you're going to be our closer," and he was from the trade deadline on.
Yeah, it was pretty
and
great.
looked pretty filthy doing it. Yeah.
So that's seal of approval for Seg, 100%. Relievers, guys, you got to figure out where to get them. I generally will say, according to this draft, I would probably say the best place to get them are around, I'd say, I think I started going after around 13. I'd say like 12, 13, 14, 15 is where you should tackle them. My whole thing is like hitters, 4 starters, 2 closers.
Yeah.
Everyone's happy.
That's the blueprint.
That's the land. That's the way to do it. Don't go for your. I'm not going to say it.
That's the one.
Not going to say it. Okay. Let's talk about 21, 22, 23. Last 3 picks here. Jack Leiter. Jack Leiter is a fun one. I want you guys to talk about who picked this guy.
I got burned badly, so Steve was pushing this one. Steve, why don't you go ahead?
Yeah, I was the guy that would, I would see the update, the post about Leiter being called up and like have a start against Detroit. And like I'd text Van, hey, like make sure you grab Leiter in your league, and then him get 2/3 of an inning. And
I stashed him for a while too.
I did too. I was like, oh man. So it went back to the well here.
I think there is another market inefficiency in high promise starting pitching prospects that get demolished in their first.
It's like Corbin Burns. Corbin Burns way back when was like high buzz and like a 8 ERA.
Carlos Rodon. Who else? I'm forgetting the name.
2019 Corbin Burns in the first pitcher list meetup. We went to this beer hall in St. John's Place, and on the TV they put on the Cubs game with the Brewers where he allowed like 3 home runs. It was a week after opening weekend, so it was like the second start of the year and just looked terrible again. And I just remember watching it being like, Corbin Burns, man. It was him and Brendan Woodruff, like who's gonna be the better one? And I remember choosing Burns over Woodruff, and I was like, what did I do? How could you? Why did you use the slider more? This is terrible.
And then he got LASIK.
Well, is that what happened with Corbin Burns?
I thought he did. I thought he ditched the goggles way back then.
Well, it was a 4-seamer that had cut action, and then he leaned into the cutter.
Yeah.
He leaned into that movement a bit more, and then all of a sudden, oh, you're right. Yeah, the goggles. Oh my gosh.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, that was cool. But Jack Leiter, I understand what you're saying, Steve, and it's really going both ways. We're kind of talking about with Tyler Fitzgerald, but right, a guy who gets shellacked in his first year, and Kyle Boddy is from the Clue the book, where they had Mr. Boddy would be like the victim of the Clue mystery books. Who would always be the victim would be Mr. Boddy, and I always say Kyle Boddy, and I'm wrong. Kyle Boddy, you guys know him, one of the founders of Driveline, said, "Hey, ignore." Pitcher command their first year in the majors. Just ignore it, throw out the window. There's so many things that go on into it. See it in the year after. Jack Leiter, overpowering fastball, like one of the highest PLV fastballs you'll find. It's just he has nothing else that's dependable. And the slider should be that pitch. It really should be. If it is, you're seeing a better Jared Jones essentially. So I love the upside pick on this. I don't believe it. I don't think it's going to happen, but 21st round is exactly who you should get. Silver approval here for Jack Leiter. I have him further in my ranks, but it's kind of a scenario of like, do I put Jack Leiter over Christopher Sanchez? Like they're both different needs. And if you want to take the flyer at this point, you got Jack Leiter. If you want to take something that's like, no, I need something my opening month or so. Okay, fine. Christopher Sanchez. But yeah, this is a huge upside play. You don't know if he's going to make the rotation. I do like Kumar Rocker, who went earlier in that round. Would you guys taken Rocker instead of Leiter?
He was on the queue ahead of him. I would have taken Rocker. It just had he been there, I would have taken him.
But it's the same mold, but just sturdier.
Yes, more. I mean, he had more success. I mean, we're talking about micro samples here, but
there's something to be said about showing up and actually being like, "This is I'm going to execute this thing. I'm going to do.
I could do this in the majors."
Yeah. And Jack Leiter, it was too chaotic. But there were moments I'm just like, oh, that's some good stuff. 2 more here. I'm going to talk about Nick Martinez first. That's your last pick. And of course, Chad Young took Roki Sasaki, and I just feel like an idiot.
My
like,
gosh,
I literally thought I read something where he wasn't going to get posted. Like it was confirmed he wasn't. So I just didn't do it. And then I was just an idiot and wrong. And then there he took him. I was like, this is dumb. But ignoring that, Nick Martinez, why did you guys go for Nick Martinez instead of, I don't know, anyone else that you thought might be an interesting play this late?
This was a me call. In addition to what was really a good year results wise all season. I mean, you kind of have to look twice and you're like 310 ERA, 103 whip, but he's going to be, I mean, he gets to decide on his option here in like a week. So we'll see if he's returning to the Reds, but if he can find a good landing spot and crack the rotation, some interesting stuff with his changeup down the home stretch where he was throwing it more and it was like dominant. The September that he put up was like 32 innings, 30 strikeouts, a sub-1 whip, and he gave up 3 runs across like 6 starts. And he really leaned on that changeup more. So I know he's up there and it doesn't seem like a home run one, but for a guy who was extremely effective in a relief role all season to get some starts and look really dominant with using a really good pitch more often. I was kind of back and forth and on the fence, but I felt like it was worth a shot just for the changeup usage alone.
Yeah, the changeup usage alone, which I told him to do, and I think he listened. I texted him, I was like, I think you should throw the changeup more. He's like, well, it sets it up. I'm like, but I think you can do it at any count. And in some games he did throw it over 35% and it was great. And some days he threw it 20% and he was still effective. Really, when it comes down to it, Nick Martinez, if he's able to get ahead without his 4-seamer and sinker, that is utilizing the cutter well and the curveball well and the changeup well, whatever those are, then he's going to have success, right? It's just about avoiding damage on the fastballs because that's where damage comes. And yeah, the changeup is just an Estrada-esque one. I've been saying that one for years, but like it is the perfect one that we can all envision. For the newer people, I guess it's more like a Devin Williams one almost, but it just kind of dies. It's just one that comes out and you think it's about to hit the glove and it hasn't yet. And it just keeps falling. And like it lulls you to sleep as it goes. It's really, really lovely to watch. The questions and concerns I have are, he's not on the Reds anymore. The time you thought he was, and he just declined his option because I think Nick Martinez was just like, I want to start. And you guys said I was going to start. And then I didn't start. And this stinks. So he declined his option. He's not going to stick around there. And he's a free agent now, which I think is the right move for him because he's showcased, I can start. Please, I need to go somewhere I can start. Thank you so much. And also pitching in Cincinnati, not helping. So I'm very curious where he lands. I would honestly hope it's like the Pirates or it's Marlins or just somewhere else that like he's not going to
San Diego.
Not San Diego.
No,
not San Diego. They have too much depth there. He's going to fight for his position the entire year, I think there. I know they just lost Musgrove, but maybe they get Sasaki. They'll invest in someone big, and he needs to go to a team that won't invest in someone big. The Royals. Go get Nick Martinez. That's perfect. Learn from Waka, again, and stuff. Go join your boys. That just seems perfect for him. So I kind of dig it. It depends on the opening matchup. I don't know if I would start him the opening weekend is the only problem. And if you're drafting a pitcher that you're not necessarily going to start in a 12-teamer that opening weekend, and if it's like the 4th or the 5th, and you don't feel like you need to stash them, I will say every single time, if you need to get a guy that you get Friday, Saturday, Sunday, so then you can make a decision on him. And if you want to, you can move on before someone else has already gone yet that hasn't been drafted. So you can choose and get an advantage instead of someone like Nick Martinez, where I feel like you're not going to be like, oh, I can't believe it.
He's probably your first drop in a lot of leagues. If that's the case.
I don't know if he's going to be a 1, 2, 3 starter. But that's my only pushback there. But yeah, maybe this does work out this year finally for Nick Martinez. Van, is there anything else you want to add there?
No, that's everything.
He's got a great name. Good name. We got one more. Who's going to talk about Christian Campbell? Because I certainly can't.
Yeah, I'll take a poke at it. I am absolutely enamored with
who is he?
Christian Campbell's rise, just through like prospectum and just the Red Sox system in general. Played at 3 levels this year: high A, double A, and triple A. His lowest WRC plus was 139 in 85 plate appearances at AAA. He had 4 homers and 4 steals at that time. Played all over, like shortstop, second, outfield. Like this guy is just like
Just
made in a baseball lab sort of talent.
He's a Campbell's soup of talent.
Yeah, there you go. That's a free one for batter
That's the
stocks.
one I wouldn't do
When they
because,
wanna
guys,
use
it's
it.
too easy.
Yeah, it's fair.
He's the Campbell of the ball. It's too easy.
But like there isn't a tool that this guy doesn't have, and on top of that, the power and speed combination, he had 20 homers, 24 steals across 125 games last year. He doesn't strike out that much, and he walks a ton, which I know that plays against the batting average, but that does lead to more opportunities to steal. And it's not like this guy has run low batting averages. The lowest he had in the minors last year was 286 in that 19 game sample. In AAA on the year, he hit well above 300. So power, speed, average, good plate discipline, like position eligibility, that should be across the board. Like
You
the
think
Red
he's gonna get
Sox,
called out at the camp?
I think
Yeah.
he'll. I don't know. The Red Sox have kind of
It's like Vaughn
in
Grissom,
recent years,
right?
yeah,
They're like battling.
Yeah, right. Yeah. So
They
here's the
kind of
thing: is if you are taking someone who's a stash hitter at the moment, they better be the best one.
yeah.
Otherwise, I wouldn't suggest it. But it's something that you say, cool. If he makes it out of camp, I'm happy I have him. If he doesn't, and we move on. I wouldn't be surprised if the Red Sox are like, look, we gotta be aggressive here. We gotta do something fun to mess with this offense because we need some life in it at the moment. So I dig it. I prefer that over some other ones that might be some boring picks around here. So it's definitely the correct methodology in my book, at least, for this. We got to wrap this one up, guys. This has been an absolute blast hanging out with the waffles of Wins Above Fantasy. The questions I ask, how has your strategy changed now that you've done this mock draft? Would you do it the same way that you did here, or what other things are you noting down for next year? Van, we'll start with you.
Yeah, I wouldn't wait quite as long. I usually use this as a chance to like authentically experience how the board shakes out. And I really like some of the SP value from like round 7 through 10 to where I really would love to have 2, if not 3 by like the 9th round. And we waited, of course, as documented, to get our first one in the 9th round. So that's really the big thing. I think we've, I've jotted down that note with the Xander Bogaerts as well. And it makes total sense that to get Jared Jones on top of that and then get Glaber 6 rounds later would have made life a lot better as we look back on this. So those are like the 2 things that jump out to me.
Mm-hmm. Sure. Steve?
I agree. I think that if you, and I've sort of been leaning back on this a little bit, like it's okay to take an ace, or like it's not a bad pick to take Schoolboy. I don't do it, but if you do, stick with your strategy. And I think we've kind of veered from that a little bit. Like I think the model is load up on hitters, be position conscious. If there is a spot that you are short on, truly punt it. Like don't half punt it, which I think we kind of did. And go from there and sort of look at that. Okay, second base is going to be your place to take a shot on the hot hitter. Lawrence Butler was like second eligible last year. Like, okay, you may end up with him. I know that's a 99th percentile outcome, but that's the kind of way that you approach it rather than not truly sticking with your guns. And I think that, while I'm probably a little bit more comfortable still waiting and fine with the staff as is, I would have done that a little bit differently and truly embraced a punt in that position and shored up our rotation, which definitely could have used it at that time, just considering we waited so long.
Yeah, that makes sense. Scale 1 to 23, Van and Steve, how would you rate your teams, Van?
Love the offense. Great power speed balance. I think, there is volatility in the staff for how long we waited. So I think that docks it a little bit, but I like the darts late on. I think I'd throw this one at about a 16.5, Nick, if you'll allow it.
Sure. No, I won't.
Okay. Yeah. Then we'll round up to 17 on that one.
Okay, there you go, Van. Steve?
The number in my head was a 16, so our average is
There you go.
16.5.
16 and
There
17.
you go.
Perfect.
There
I
you go.
love
There
that.
you go.
And who had the best pick save for Roki Sasaki in this draft that was not on your team, Van?
I had Hunter Brown mid 12th round and Pete Crow Armstrong early 18th round. I like that one.
You like Pete Crow Armstrong PCA. Sure. Steve?
I really liked the Bobby Miller pick in round 18 by
Eric Samolsky.
Yep.
I might know him, guys.
I've detailed it. There was a clear injury with Miller. Like, he looked great until that happened. I think he's going to be amazing.
I think he's going to
be amazing again.
Yep.
So that was my favorite pick.
There you go. All right, guys, that does it for this episode of On the Corner. Huge thanks again to Van Burnett and Steve Gesuele of the Wins Above Fantasy podcast. Go check out their pod. Of course, they have their own YouTube channel. They have their own podcast feed. And of course, you have the main one, the Pitcherless podcast, Fantasy Baseball podcast feed that you can check out all the shows that we do. But huge thanks to them. Go check them out on Twitter. Van, where can they find you on Twitter and Blue Sky?
At Van_verified.
All right. And Steve?
I am Stav8818, and I recently created a Blue Sky account this week with a bunch of the Pitcherless people.
There we go.
Follow that whole list.
You'll also find Stav 1818 inside of the Playback.tv stream all the time. I love seeing you there. It's pretty fun. And looking forward to seeing you guys throughout the off season and all of next year. One of the most consistent podcasts you'll find in the last 4 years running, Wins Above Fantasy. So great having you guys here. Thank you so much for joining us. And thank you all for joining us here via audio or live stream or on YouTube. Until next time, on behalf of Van and Steve, my name is Nick Pollock. And may your BABIPs be low and your strikeouts high. Goodbye.